Hi church, Nicole here from Made For You Ministry, back with a video on 5 myths about disability culture. This video is based on research, real conversations, and of course what God has to say about inclusion. However, keep in mind, everything we talk about may not be universally true for every single person. Always keep an open mind and be willing to keep learning. If someone with a disability tells you something different from what we talk about, allow that to be an opportunity for great conversation and growth. As we learn and grow together, we can bring the church to the forefront of inclusion efforts in our community, just as Jesus calls us to do. Let's get started. Myth number 1, people with disabilities always need to be taken care of. As with anyone else in our community, we want to support and take care of these members when it's needed. But to have a disability does not disqualify one from serving and ministering to others as well. We want to serve alongside these individuals rather than always putting them on the receiving end of services. We want to take a step beyond simply including to create true belonging. Belonging means we practice ministry with and ministry by individuals with disabilities. These individuals are valued members of our body, and they bring unique spiritual gifts and talents that contribute to the church. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10 says, "As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another, as good stewards of God's varied grace." With that said, it's always great to offer help to others, but it is essential we always ask before we help. There are very real stories of well-meaning individuals helping someone with a disability and causing more harm than good. A person's wheelchair, cane, or communication device is an extension of their body and should be treated with respect. Always ask before touching or helping, and let the individual tell you what will be most helpful to them. Myth number 2 is that people with disabilities are much different than myself. We all have one thing in common. Genesis tells us each man is made in God's image. All of us. Again and again, individuals with disabilities tell us what they truly want is to simply be seen, heard, and included, which doesn't sound all that different from what I want and what I'm guessing you probably want too. Spending time in community with these individuals may reveal you have more in common than the things that separate you. Our third myth is thinking words are just words. What I say doesn't matter that much. Matthew 12:34 says, "For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks." What we say can show empathy and love, or it can unintentionally push people away from the church. Inclusive language helps others feel welcome, understood, and wanted within the church. Let's look at a few key ways to make our language more inclusive. Person-first language is when we acknowledge that a disability is just a small aspect of who a person is, rather than a defining characteristic. An example of this is when we talk about a person with Down syndrome rather than a Downs person, or a person who is blind rather than the blind person. With person-first language, we're putting the person before their disability. This is an easy way to speak more inclusively and a small step to making a disability a less defining characteristic of that person. Up next, we have some terms that may have negative connotations. This includes terms such as wheelchair-bound or victim or sufferer of a disease. When it comes to mobility aids such as a wheelchair, individuals who use them see these items not as a hindrance, but actually a wonderful tool that helps them access their environment. So they're not bound to that wheelchair, but rather you could say they simply use a wheelchair. And instead of saying victim or sufferer, try the person-first language we mentioned, such as a person diagnosed with a brain injury rather than a brain-injured victim. Finally, this also includes language that is offensive, intentionally or not, most notably the R word. This word has evolved from what was once a recognized medical diagnosis into a hurtful word. This word, even when used in a joke or not in regards to individuals with disabilities, can be offensive. If you want more information or don't know what the R word is, look into spreadtheword.global as a great resource. It's important to remove this kind of language from all aspects of our speech to be respectful and inclusive. Our fourth myth is that it's disrespectful to acknowledge or talk about disabilities. We just learned there are things we can say that don't promote inclusion. However, discussions about disability and inclusion are necessary to make change and to form a supportive community. When we ignore these topics altogether, it can create a sense of invisibility for these individuals, as if their experiences shouldn't be talked about. Instead, focus conversations on information that is relevant and necessary to improve their experience or form meaningful relationships. It may not be appropriate or necessary to ask a stranger what happened that put you in a wheelchair, but asking how can we make worship more accessible to you as someone who uses a wheelchair is a great way to open a productive and supportive conversation. One way to check our hearts before we speak is found in James 1:19, which says, "Let every person be quick to hear and slow to speak." When we take time to educate ourselves and our questions come from a place of love, great conversations can result, and we can continue to change our community for the better. Our fifth and final myth is that people with disabilities prefer community with others who have disabilities. There absolutely is value in spending time with individuals with similar experiences and bonding and shared challenges, but we miss the point if we stop there. These individuals may experience separation from peers in schools and other areas of community. As a church, we should see this as an opportunity to value true belonging. 1 Corinthians 12, verse 12 through 13 says, "For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. We are all equally valuable in God's eyes, and together form one whole body, encouraging us to grow in community with those who seem different from ourselves." Let's wrap up with 5 key takeaways from what we've learned today. 1. It's great to be helpful to individuals with disabilities, but always ask first and acknowledge that these individuals can serve others as well. 2. We have more in common than we might think with those around us, including people with disabilities. 3. Our words matter. Jesus tells us our words have the power to make others feel welcomed and loved, and we should take these opportunities seriously. 4. It's okay to acknowledge differences. This can open conversations that help individuals feel seen and heard. And 5. Our community is a beautiful thing when it's shared with people from different walks of life than yourself. We made it through dispelling 5 major myths about individuals with disabilities, and I hope you learned a few things along the way. Now take a breath, do your best, and accept you won't be perfect. The more time you spend in community with people who have different needs than yourself, the more natural this will become. As you meet someone with a disability, follow their lead on language they use and listen when they tell you what their needs are. If you mess up and say something or do something wrong, simply acknowledge it, apologize, and learn from it for next time. I want to end with 1 Corinthians 13, verse 1 through 2. "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing." Let's do all these things in love, church. Thanks for listening.